Today on the Low Carb Cook, we're exploring another absolute basic in my keto bread series, sesame seed burger buns. Whether it's the summer barbecue, picnic in the park, or just a humble packed lunch, people are really used to the convenience of slapping something between two pieces of bread to pick it up and eat it. And a good, soft, fluffy white bread roll is something many low carbers miss out on, trying all sorts of weird replacements from portobello mushrooms, lettuce leaves, and other strange concoctions. But on this episode of my bread series, I'm going to show you this simple Standmixer and handmade recipe for my perfect sesame seed burger buns. So let's get started. So the ingredients for this are almost the same as my other standard white bread recipe that you'll find here on the channel. We're going to start with 75 grams of almond flour, 240 grams of vital wheat gluten. That's where this bread gets its elasticity from and feels like normal traditional bread. We've got 40 grams of powdered erythritol. That's to add some sweetness. The Western diet is very used to sweet white bread. We've got just a small pinch of salt. Never put too much salt in your bread mix because salt will kill the yeast and we want a good rise on these. I've got a teaspoon of xanthan gum, that again adding some flexibility into this mix. Then I've got my special ingredient, 30 grams, a little less than my standard recipe, of bamboo fiber. Now this is a zero carb, very light, very fluffy ingredient. Then we have 2 eggs to bind, 250 ml or 1 cup of cold water. I'm going to add a few drops of stevia just to add another layer of sweetness and counteract the erythritol. We're going to use 1 teaspoon of honey. That's just to feed the yeast. That's not going to leave carbs in the bread. I've got 40 grams of butter. Now this is soft room temperature butter. That's going to help it mix in. And then we've got 7 grams of yeast. Now these packet mixes always get the best rise out of bread for me. I've tried other yeasts. They don't seem to work so well, so I highly recommend using the foil packets. These are just cheap supermarket packets and it's about 56 pence for 6 sachets of this. So it's great stuff. And what kind of sesame seed bun would be complete without sesame seeds? So we have a big bowl of sesame seeds ready to roll those in before they go in the oven. Now, as with so many recipes on my channel, I'm taking the most laborious parts out of making any bread dough by using a stand mixer. And this one, with all of its many attachments, is an absolute must-have for me. And I highly recommend getting one. If you already own a bread maker though, you can even allow that machine to do the mix for you and leave it until it's ready for its third rise before whipping it out, dividing it up, and then placing it on the tray to do its final rise before baking. Today though, we're going to use the stand mixer. Now to get started today, the first thing I'm going to do is turn my oven on to its lowest setting, and then I'm going to fill a tray in the bottom with water. I've already boiled my kettle. Now this is going to simply help create a water bath and a nice, hot, steamy environment for our yeast to work in. So we just push that in. There. Now the next thing, just going to move some bits out of the way and bring in my large dish. Now we're going to sieve all of these ingredients through just to get some air into it now and get any lumps out, obviously quite important. You'll get a few big chunks of almond flour, but that's okay, the pieces can go back in at the end. When you're making a loaf with these in the bread maker, you really don't need to sieve these ingredients, but it really works for making these or for a handmade loaf for some reason. So vital wheat gluten, 240 grams of that. Lots of people will ask, can you replace the gluten in this bread? I really don't know what else is going to give you that natural elasticity, and unfortunately gluten really is the only thing I've found that can do that. Next, this is my bamboo fiber. Now this is quite fluffy, but it does clump up in the pack, so this is the thing that really does need to be sieved through well. Takes a while, but it adds a real lightness and fluffiness to this white bread. This is an ingredient that I purchased 6 months ago to use for something else and never used, and then I had it sitting at the back of the cupboard, and while I was trying to figure out the recipe for the perfect white bread, this one just popped into my head and I thought I'd give it a try, and thankfully it worked. But you can see it's like cotton wool. You can see it's like cotton wool left in the bottom of this sieve there. So we don't need that piece, that can go. Next, our erythritol. You do get small lumps in your erythritol, just like icing sugar, so that's worth sieving through. There we go. And finally, our pinch of salt, and our xanthan gum. Now to help the mixer out, I'm just going to pre-mix those in this dish. And the machine is really the thing that's going to do all the kneading, all the hard mixing, but just to blend things through first really makes a big difference. Okay, so that's our dry ingredients. Now, it is quite important, this sequence, that you put these elements in the dish here. So we are going to add, first of all, check it's still warm. That's still a good temperature. We don't want it too hot, otherwise that's going to kill the yeast. Second, my 2 eggs. There we go, and I'm just going to grab a fork just to lightly beat those before they go in. Now this is where I'm going to add a couple of drops of stevia. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, stevia is incredibly sweet. You don't need a lot of it in there, but it just balances out the flavour from that erythritol. So now, on top of that, we're going to add our dry ingredients. There we go. And then in the centre of those dry ingredients, I'm going to make my little well. Open our packet of yeast and pour that into the centre of the well there. Then we're going to add 1 teaspoon of honey. I know it must seem really counterintuitive putting something that's got sugar in it into a low carb recipe, but the yeast does need this and it will use it all up. Yeah, just drizzle that on top of the yeast. And then around the outsides of the dish, I'm going to add my small pieces of butter. And now we're ready to start doing our mixing. And we're going to turn this up to about 3 on the scale and just let that paddle start doing the mixing. That hook's really going to start getting the moisture in there, getting the dry ingredients mixed together and start lifting it and churning it. And that starts the whole kneading process. It's amazing that these machines work as well as they do. There. And while that's kneading the bread perfectly, I'm going to have a quick clear up. There, that's really come together very nicely, as you can see. So the next step, we're going to pop this back in the same mixing bowl, and I'm just going to spray this with some coconut oil spray, just so it doesn't stick to the bottom of the bowl as it rises. And there we are, our fantastic sticky white bread dough there, all perfectly kneaded in the machine. And that's activated all that gluten, and you'll get that natural stretch that you're used to with normal bread. So this is going to go to rise in the oven now. Make sure you turn your oven off before you put this in. We don't want to start cooking it. We've sprayed our dish down with coconut oil, and I'm just going to place that in the bottom. And then I've got a clean dishcloth that I've wetted. Just wring that out. And we're going to place that over the top of the dish. So that's going to go into our nice, moist, warm oven for about an hour for its first of 2 rises. While that's happening, I'm going to have a clear up and we can take a quick break. Welcome back to the Low Carb Cook. Now our dough has been rising in the oven for an hour now. Let's pull that out and see how that is looking. Oh my goodness. That is very impressive. Gosh, that's fantastic. Now what we do is give it a second kneading. And that might seem really counterintuitive to knock all the air out that we've just spent an hour getting into it. But this is going to give it a finer gluten structure, and that means better final bread. So I'm using some lupin flour to dust my work surface today. Lupin flour is around 7.5 grams of net carbs per 100 grams, way lower than flour, and it's an ingredient I like to use in things like pasta. It's a great alternative to things like coconut flour, which I think has a bit of a nasty taste. This is all sticky and gooey, just as you'd want it to be. We'll pour that out, and we're going to start just hand kneading this now, using the old push technique. You can do whatever you like. You can pick it up and throw it around. You can put it back into your mixer. If your stand mixer is still set up, there's no reason why you can't just pop it back in there for a minute. But I like to get my hands in there and really feel the difference. This feels so different from earlier on. It's just like holding a big sponge. It's so rubbery, but it's the perfect texture. It's exactly what bread should be. Keep your surface dusted. I'm just going to give this a couple of minutes of hand kneading. More flour. This is a good workout. If you need your exercise while you're on your keto diet as well, make yourself some bread. Yeah, that feels great. Now, I'm just going to wipe that off there. Now I want to make 16 equally sized bread rolls with this, so I'm just going to weigh this mixture. Okay, so we have 794 grams there. That's really close to 800 grams. 800 grams divided by 16 is 50 grams each. I had a state education, but I'm pretty sure that's right. So I'm going to take my knife cutter. These are really great tools. It saves scoring your worktop with a knife. And I'm going to start by cutting that in half, and then half again, and then half again, and so on. Now you can guess this by eye if you want to, but the simplest way is to weigh them out. So we're looking for pieces that are around 50 grams each. That's 48. It's 42. Now I'm not going to keep you waiting while I do all these, so we'll come back in just a second. Okay, good enough. That's our last one. Now, what I have is another clean dishcloth. Very important that it's clean, which I've also wet. And I'm going to wring it out, not too much, because I want this to be nice and moist. We're going to lay that on our work surface. Then we have our bowl of sesame seeds. And we have the first of our 2 oven trays. These are from Chicago Metallic, purchased through Amazon.co.uk. And what we're going to do is take the first 8 and we're going to shape them. I'm just going to roll it into a ball with the palm of my hand, and then I'm going to start pinching the sides and pulling them back, and I'm tucking them underneath, and I'm pinching that with my fingers so I've got a nice soft crown over the top. And then I'm going to roll that on my damp tea towel and then dip that in my sesame seeds. And we're going to do that for each one of these bread rolls. Take our ball, roll it out on the table, get that bit back in, pinch underneath, roll on our wet surface to really dampen it, and then roll it there in our sesame seeds. If you just start by placing them at equal distances, remember these are going to really expand, so give them plenty of room to expand. So again, I'm pulling it tight over the top so I've got a nice rounded dome on there. Wet it on my cloth, roll it in the sesame seeds. And we'll come back in a second when I've done all 16. And our last one to roll. These are forming a little bit of a skin because they've been out in the dry air, but that's okay. The piece that's been touching the desk is still quite moist, so we're just making that now the dome. Last one, roll on our towel, roll in our sesame seeds, There we are. Now, the one thing I'm going to do before these go back in the oven is just squash each one down with the palm of my hand. And I'm squashing really firmly. I'm really pressing these down, and that's going to get those seeds to really stick well into the top. But they're going to come back up in the oven, so don't worry about doing this. It's absolutely fine. It's amazing how resilient dough is once it's got yeast in it and it really starts rising. Now these are going back into our nice moist warm oven for another hour and a half for their second rise, and I'm going to let you enjoy watching that happen. There, an hour and a half has gone by and these are now well risen, ready just to pop out while we preheat the oven. I'm also going to remove that water bath because I don't want that to end up crisping these up. So I'm just going to pop these out of the oven for a minute. We'll take a look at those, and we'll also get rid of that water bath. There. So now I'm going to turn my oven up to about 175 degrees centigrade, and we'll just wait a moment for that to heat up. But while we're doing that, let's take a look at these absolutely awesome, white, soft, light and fluffy, ready to be baked. Now they're going to go in for about 25 to 30 minutes, and I'll turn them halfway through so they're nice and evenly cooked all the way around. Welcome back. Now this sound here, that tells you our buns are done. They've been in for 25 minutes and they are now baked to perfection. So let's pull them out of the oven. And they look amazing and they smell amazing. You get all that aroma of that toasted sesame seed goodness coming off of those. Let's pull the second set out. Now to keep these even, I have turned them halfway through the cook, as I said I would, and that's really helped across the board. Otherwise they'd be lighter ones at the front and darker ones on the back. And I even swapped the shelves, and that really helps too. Look at these. These are still soft and squishy, and you can see underneath they're perfectly baked. Now we're going to leave these to cool down on the rack for a while, and when you slice these open for your burgers or fillings, you'll find they are light and fluffy like traditional burger buns. With these, you definitely won't feel left out at the barbecue, and you'll have the pleasure of knowing that everyone else around you is stuffing themselves with bloating carbs while you're keeping it keto. And of course, we know you want to see inside to see what these look like. So let's take a look. Wow, absolutely awesome. They're going to be amazing with a burger, salad, all the trimmings that you'd normally have for your summer barbecue. These will happily store for around 5 days, especially if you keep them in a cool place in an airtight container, or you can make them and freeze them ahead of time if you prefer. Check out my other videos in this bread series where we tackle homemade and bread maker methods for most common recipes, and we even delve into some more specialty breads too. Subscribe to my channel and ding the bell for notifications when new things get uploaded, and we'll help you with more everyday keto recipes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Hey, thanks for watching The Low Carb Cook. If you enjoyed this episode, why not watch one of our playlists or this recommended video? Click on the logo below to subscribe. Join us on any of our social pages, or if you'd like to show a bit more love, you can support the channel on buymeacoffee.com using the link below. For even more great stuff, check out the website, thelowcarbcook.com.